Yeah, I think it's one of those interesting things about songwriting where it's like, it's so much about following just what feels right. At least it is for me.
This is Champagne is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign-Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign-Urbana music scene, past or present. Champagne is Also a Band podcast is proud to be a part of the Champagne Showers Podcast Network. Welcome to Champagne is Also a Band podcast. Today, I have Micah Boyce. You may know Micah from such bands as So Long Forgotten and White Lucy. And then also, he's part of and runs a creative collective called New Sphere Collective. He works with artists like Louisville and Shop Class, which you may know from episode 139. And then also JT the Human. So, Micah, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's really good to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Today, we're going to be talking about your song Melee off of the upcoming album The Paradise, which is dropping August 15th everywhere, but also on Bandcamp, where you can pick up looks like a 2 LP vinyl, which looks amazing. So, yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. So my current band, White Lucy, been working on a record for, coming up on 3 years now. The Paradise is the name of the record. Comes out on vinyl with the Chicago record label Sugar Records, which is the label of the well-known Chicago record store Sugar Records. They also put out vinyl with bands in Chicago, so we're releasing it with them. You can pre-order it now on Bandcamp if you're interested. If you're listening to this after August 15th, you can probably walk into Sugar Records and grab yourself a copy.
I will put the link to the Bandcamp page in the notes, so be sure to find it there. So I guess without further ado, let's listen to Melee by White Lucy.
To get fucked up in the melee. This is gonna go on in 2 ways. Get out the way or thrown out with the baddies. Lineate, permeate, get yourself bloodied up in the melee. This will probably blow up in my face. For the riot banners up, join a parade. Agitate, alleviate, stop the pain, bleeding heart to the crusades. I went home with a wooden leg. Bought a new pair of shoes for a melee. Too much of a good thing. All you see is like a boomerang. I can find the true thing. I'ma get unruly. Too much of a good thing. Christ sees like a movie. I can find the true thing. Fight to keeping it unruly. Wait, hey, was that a mayday? You about to get fucked up in the melee. Well, this is going down on the 2 ways. Fizzle out a crash and burn in the blue blaze. Got that dog inside, axe to grind. No dialogue, eat the divas on the north side. Well, this will probably blow up in our face. Start a riot, tear it down, join the parade. The riff-raff, rabble trash. Shit a vein, bleed them out for the backlash. Just got home with a golden egg. All a new pair of shoes for the melee. Too much of a good thing. All you see is like a boomerang. I can find the true thing. I'ma get unruly. Too much of a good thing. Christ sees like the movie. I can find the true thing. Fight to keeping it unruly. Too much of a good thing. It seems like a movie. I can find the true thing. I'ma get rudy. Too much of a good thing. Christ sees like a movie. I can find the true thing. Fight to keeping it unruly.
Welcome back. So, of course, my first and favorite question is, what came first? Was it the music or was it the lyrics?
Good question. And almost, I would say pretty much 100% of the time with White Lucy, the music comes first. And the reason for that is I'm only 50% of the whole of White Lucy. My best friend and writing partner, Chase Carson, he kind of takes on all of the responsibility of the music. Basically, he's an incredible guitarist and songwriter, and he takes guitar ideas and then puts them into Logic, and he'll build out entire songs effectively and then send them over to me. And and then I just like have this, like I have a playground that I can just run around and do whatever I want with in it. Melee is a song that like Chase probably shared it with me back in 2018 or 2017. I mean, we put out a record after his initial demo was done, and this one was kind of just in the background. And then when we got back around to writing our upcoming record, we kind of pulled this one out of the drawer, or I pulled this one out of the drawer, I should say. I revisited it, and it kind of met me in the perfect time to where I could make something out of it. So yeah, that's a really long way to get around to saying that, yeah, the music 100% came first, melody and lyrics came after.
In terms of at least the initial writing, the music, was that done by Chase predominantly, and then you filled in with the melody? Or like, I'm curious about how that collaboration works in terms of the, like, how do you start with an idea and then build off of it?
Yeah. So like what you're hearing in terms of like all the instrumentation is effectively a re-recording of everything that Chase demoed initially. There is somewhere on my phone in an iCloud file the original demo version of what Chase gave me. And I think like the working title is, what is that? It's like this line from, is it a book or something? A fistful of 50s and a, what is it? I don't know. It's some working title.
Okay, so for all of you that are on the edge of your seat, the actual working title was A Fistful of 50s and a Day Without Fear. So there you go.
You know, we had this demo with no vocals on it. Again, it's kind of just sitting in this shared iCloud folder forever. And when we decided we wanted to start making a new record, we started working on like brand new ideas at that time, but we're like, we should go like revisit some old stuff. And this was one of the demos that had been sitting there. And it was just basically like his guitar plugged into some sort of audio interface. So you have like, you know, your actual like tracked guitar part, but the synthesizers, the drums, the bass were all, you know, MIDI, Logic sounds, and the original demo. And then I took that demo and I pulled it into my Logic on my computer. A lot of times how I get started is I just hear a melody. This song was really interesting to me. It was one of the more difficult ones to get going because it has this very like syncopated guitar part and drum part. So figuring out the melody was the first thing. And once I had the melody in my head, I tracked it. It was gibberish, whatever I sang. And then I went back and effectively filled in the words to that. And what's interesting is that word melee came out in the initial freestyle that I did on the demo. And then I had to kind of go like, man, I really like that word. There's something that's catchy about it. And so it was like, what does that mean to me? and
Sure.
just unpacked that. And that's what kind of became the lyrics and everything that you hear.
I think what's interesting, at least, musically, there's a lot of things that kind of opened up into my mind when you were talking about kind of having this demo with probably more than a skeleton, right? Everything was kind of laid out in a certain way.
Yeah.
The verse is just, it's that D flat, I was playing along with the guitar and I was just like, oh, it's like, I kept expecting it to change the chord. But what I love about that is it has this almost kind of a pedal tone, but then there's these things happening around it that gives it this really cool motion.
Mm.
And then I was thinking about kind of within the context of, well, there's two ways of going about talking about this, but one of the things I was thinking about is the verses are like a march or like something kind of being in this road or taking a road with a group of people that are just going. There's action, there's things going, but it's all going kind of in this one direction. And I kept feeling like it kind of gave that motion of people moving together. And I know that that's not necessarily the whole thought behind what Melee is, but what that verse does, or that setup for that verse does, is it gives the ear like such a like, as soon as you hit that chorus, because like all of a sudden it's just like kind of these warm chords and like a change, and it's finally going back to the tonic, and it's this one thing where it gives this sense of relief, but then also your words are not necessarily they're kind of beautiful, but they're also wrought with consequence, it feels like. So there's a very conflicting cognitive dissonance that's going on with this song.
Everything you're saying is so exciting to me because it's like you're actually revealing things that I didn't realize were like working for the song in a way that like, oh shit, like that actually works way better than I realized it would. No, everything that you said is spot on. Yeah, I think it's one of those interesting things about songwriting where it's like, it's so much about following just what feels right. At least it is for me. I'm sure other people are more methodical about it or whatever. I'm not like a classically trained musician or anything like that. As a vocalist and as a lyricist, for me, it's like, I couldn't tell you what any song, like when it's presented to me from Chase or when it was presented to me from So Long Forgotten or whatever, I couldn't tell you like what key it is in, but it's like, I can hear a melody when I hear the part being played. I just do what feels right in my mind, right? So it's like a lot of it is just, it's the most gut sort of primal sort of reaction to what it is that I'm hearing. And what's cool about that is like you were talking about, there's like this dissonance there, right? There's like this release in the chorus, but also like when you really listen to the lyrics at the same time, you're like, that's actually not that relieving, I guess. I think as I was writing it, that's not necessarily what I was going for. But then in hindsight, I look back and it was like the subconscious is a powerful thing. And it's exactly what it should be.
Within that context of the, cognitive dissonance is, I like the fact that what it's doing in that chorus is, you mentioned biases. What is it? I'm totally like...
Yeah, you're right. Biases. Yeah.
Biases. Yeah. Yes. One of the things that is the hardest thing to convince people of is that confirmation bias exists. And in a certain way, this chorus is functioning in that way. It's telling you and letting you feel that this is how it should be, right? Like it's comforting you with its sound, but then also... Like
it's sonically comforting, but it's not actually like literally... And I mean literally.
Yes. I'm not trying to go too deep, but I'm like, this is a perfect example of being told something that you normally wouldn't want to hear. Like, you don't want to hear the truth, but because of the way that it's presented, it's like, everything's fine. You know?
Totally.
Like, because you're expecting the chorus to be uplifting or powerful or whatever you want to call it. But it's interesting that you had mentioned trying to come up with a melody when at the same time there's a syncopated movement to the song. I was actually going to ask about, it feels like you fell into it because there's, in that first verse, I think about, you say delineate, and it's in sync with the guitar that's actually doing the, on the beat. And I was going to say, it almost felt like the guitar was placed there to emphasize what you were saying, but you were singing in emphasis with the guitar.
Yeah,
right?
all the
so
guitar came first. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. So describe a little bit about like finding that rhythm, or like finding out where your own rhythm and melody fit in with this syncopation.
Yeah.
You know, at times you kind of seem to fall, I want to say out of step, but that's not right. Like a little bit in contrast with it. So
Yeah. I think when I revisited it after years, of hearing it, Chase and I are both really big hip hop fans. And so like, as we discussed earlier, like coming from the world of music that I come from, which is like being the singer in this emo band, like I think with So Long Forgotten, I didn't have to be super thoughtful in terms of like what I was doing like rhythmically with my vocal. And it's not to say that there wasn't like something rhythmic to it or whatever, like there were plenty of ways to play in that world with rhythm, with my vocals. But when we started White Lucy, and when I think about our influences, which is a lot of hip hop, a lot of R&B, I wanted to challenge myself to do something really different as a vocalist. And So Long Forgotten, like when it came to emotion and emoting, as a vocalist, there was like soft and like intentional and pretty and like listen to what I have to say. And it's this really like, like when you're listening to like an emo band, it's like those moments of quiet, soft, very introspective. And then like all of a sudden, like it's loud. And what do you do with your voice is you belt it. And so there's like a very obvious delineation between like, this is loud and intense, and then this is quiet. Whereas like when you like listen to R&B, for example, and Chase and I are both huge R&B fans, you'll have moments where there's like a belting sort of vocal, but it's not the same thing as you get when you like have like like yelling in a band versus, these like really soft, almost whispering type vocals. Cause that would be like the contrast with So Long Forgotten, is like a really soft, like almost whispered vocal to like now the guitar's crazy intense, and so is the vocal. And so like I like to think of it almost like, we're looking at your computer right now and you can see like the wavelengths of our vocal.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's like the sort of like mid part or whatever, the short part, and then there's the wide part. And I feel like So Long Forgotten was like this, and like White Lucy is like, and what I'm, for those of you listening, I'm motioning like two, like my hands really close together and then very wide apart. Whereas like I would say like White Lucy is a much more like mid sort of thing. And so creating emotion, what is perceivably, or at least if you were to look at it on a wavelength, is actually a smaller range. But I think like what that's forced me to do as a vocalist is to be that much more intentional and everything. And man, I'm totally going off on a tangent here, but like to get back to your question, when it came to like how the sort of syncopated rhythm of the song influenced my vocal, it was like figuring out a way to like fill in the space. The guitar like really kind of like walks all over, and I wanted to kind of do that with my vocal while also being able to like find these moments where it's like it's punchy without, again, being overbearing with the vocal. So
I mean, what you're describing makes me think about being less about dynamics and more about articulation.
Yeah.
So like the way that you give emphasis, I almost think in terms of when you've got nice legato guitar or you've got a nice staccato. So like really short or really long, elongated, but also having accents in a particular place that gives its own emotional context without really exploding in the dynamics. I'm thinking in terms of what you were saying and then kind of putting it in, I guess, my own words to make sure I'm understanding correctly what you mean.
Yeah. I think you're spot on there. It's dynamics versus articulation is a perfect way to put it. Like So Long Forgotten, my vocals, it was all about dynamics. And here it's about like finding that less dynamic, more articulation, more, I would say almost like intentionality.
You said that the word melee kind of appealed to you.
Yeah.
So when did the concept of this melee, and I'm just going to kind of go a little bit off and say like what I'm thinking about what this song is about.
Sure.
And I'm going to do broad strokes here. I'm doing the thing where I exist in two worlds because I'm like, okay, this could be a person that is truly passionate and wants to make a change, but also recognizes kind of the consequences of And by consequences, I just mean like not that they did anything wrong, but that in protesting, or if you look at it from a revolution standpoint, the consequences are maybe that you get locked up, that you may get injured, that you may get hurt. And I see kind of the two verses functioning as those, almost the first verse feels like the hopeful, where it's like, yeah, we're going to go and do this. And then I think the second verse has that, I still believe in it, but I can see where, oh boy, this is going to hurt. But then in the other world that I like to think of is that this is somebody that may be opportunistic and may say like, well, I just want to fight and be angry for no good reason because it's fun. There's just a few things that tip me off, and that, you know, I don't want to say like it's that first line, but it is that first line where it's like, hey, what do you say? Want to get fucked up in a melee? You know, like if you say it that way, now you hear that tone, you get so excited about your favorite team winning that you start wrecking stuff, and it doesn't matter. So there's that other thing, but it still has the same like, yeah, let's get excited, and then, oh shit, what did I do?
It's exciting to me as a songwriter to hear you talk about the imagery that comes up for you when you like hear the song. This song is very much meant to be a song about revolution, or feeling at a wit's end to where you would want to just become violent. I don't know how else to say, like, it's in a lot of ways being in like almost in a post-punk band. This may be the most punk rock shit I've ever written, and which is really funny. Like you were talking about marching, right? And the way that the actual like the syncopation or the overall rhythm of the song like brought that up for you. I was like, oh, I hadn't actually thought about it that way, and I wonder if that was like just something that was happening subconsciously for me when I was writing it. It's always weird when I'm like trying to unpack my own lyrics. Hey, what'd you say about you want to get fucked up in a melee? Yeah, like there's 100% like supposed to be like a fuck it sort of spirit to that. And I think what probably like the spirit of behind that line and much of the song is living in this world where so much of us are sitting behind a computer screen and we're feeling like rage in our gut and our soul and reading whatever we might be reading, and then you eventually sort of like come out of it and you like go sit down and watch Netflix with a piece of pizza. You know what I mean? Like, it's that whole thing of, it's almost like we're not only living in this world where, you can read something online, you can see something online. I mean, I think of like recent events and the sort of videos we're seeing now of American citizens being detained and the rise of fascism in our face. And we just see it sitting on our couches on our phones, and it can make you so angry. And then so often where that like actually plays out is in comment sections. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's people are just fighting all the time. And like you look up the word melee, it's like a confused mass of people basically just like fighting each other, you know, like no one knows what the fuck is going on, and they're all just like going at each other. And I think like that's where like when I was like singing through like the sort of freestyle gibberish, you know, gut sort of melodies that were coming out as I was listening to the demo, that word kept coming up, and I'm like, why does that word keep coming up? And I did the most basic thing I could do, and I went and I looked up the definition of it. And it's not like I didn't know what the word melee meant, but always when I hear that word melee, you know, I always think of Super Smash Bros. And so I'm like, but what's the actual definition of melee? So when I went and, you know, looked it up, I'm like, oh yeah. And this just feels like what we're all experiencing now, is that everyone's confused. We're given so much information, and what ends up happening is like, it just turns to anger and it turns to violence. And sometimes that violence is justified and sometimes it isn't. And, you know, there's confusion about what violence is justified and which violence isn't.
It is funny you mentioned that when you're like, this is the most punk rock song. So before I had actually listened to any White Lucy, and we were talking about being on the show, and I said, send me the lyrics. I looked at the lyrics and I'm like, oh, this is going to like hardcore. You know, I was like, this is going to be punk, or, you know, I don't know why, but my mind went there. But you're like, the way that the words are laid out. And then when it started up and I'm like, oh yeah, like you kind of get into it's it's got a groove to it. It's just funny that you said like this may have been the most punk rock thing that you've ever written, but when I read it, that's what I was imagining that was what it was going to be like. I think that's part of the whole, like, it's that charm of it. You can say some awful things, but in the most sweetest way. Like, there's some words that I thought were interesting. You know, I went home with a wooden leg, just got home with a golden egg in the second. I mean, granted, yes, they rhyme, but I mean, golden egg, I think I understand where it's that, you know, the golden goose, the golden egg, you know, something.
Yeah.
A prize. But like the wooden leg, I was just curious where that wooden leg or what you were referring to.
Yeah, really quickly, going back to just golden egg. When I originally wrote the song, I had written it, went home with a Fabergé. So it was like this idea of like so much of the song is about just eating the bourgeoisie, you know, like there's something to that, you know what I mean? Where it's like, as things sort of like tip a certain way and the masses become over all of the oligarchy and whatever else, is like, you know, things naturally tip over to where it's like they're walking out of mansions with Fabergé eggs or golden egg, you know, and then also there's also the reality of like, you know, you're walking out of something that maybe started as a protest that you stuck around, your leg got whatever, something happened to it.
Right.
And but you stuck it out and you just like, you strapped a broken table leg to your broken leg or whatever, you know, just to stick out, you know, stay with the people and continue protesting. So I was trying to bring up like those images of like, man, like I got home from like a crazy day of protesting and, you know, whatever else, and sit down on my couch and, you know, like, oh, you know, I looted this place or I stole this thing, and like you sit down and like, okay, now what? There's so much to unpack there in terms of like the images that I was bringing up for me, and so much of that when I wrote it was just trying to like elicit feelings, and, you know, hopefully people walk away with like their own sort of images in their mind of like being a part of that sort of thing or tapping into something within them that wants to be.
The way that the chorus hits, I often mention in the show that I feel like the chorus functions in different ways in terms of the context of the song. It's either a reinforcement of the idea or it's a contextualization of the idea, where it's like a reflective, or it's like the opposite voice, and I was kind of thinking about how this chorus functions in the context of the verses. And, you know, I wrote next to it, I said, well, is this hope? I mean, is this something that is hopeful? Because it sounds really hopeful, you know, in terms of details. One of the things that I love is that, I think it was like the second time that I heard it, because I was listening to more of the lyrics, but then like, oh, there's kind of a chorus in the background of like these voices, and I don't know what they're saying. Do you know what they're saying, or are they saying, or are they just making...
They're just kind of doing like, you know, so if the lyric is too much of a good thing, they're kind of just doing like taking like the last two words of each line and kind of,
okay, because that's what it kind of sounded like, but
mood,
you know,
ring. Like they're just like mood ring, you know. Like,
but like
creating a pad in a way.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But what I like is the chorus sounds so hopeful and very, like, the music feels hopeful and the arrangement sounds so hopeful, but the words are kind of regretful.
Yeah.
You know, basically like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Or, I mean, going back to the verses, and the end of each of the verses is, you mentioned kind of we've gone and we've done something, but now it's like we have to come back to our lives and like, okay, what do we do now?
Yeah.
What is our life? And unfortunately, it feels like the chorus, although beautiful, digs a deeper hole of like, well, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And like, was it worth it?
The first line that I wrote within the chorus and everything else kind of just came after that was too much of a good thing. And that line, just to give it away for those of you who end up listening to this, is like a direct reference to effectively the modern world we're living in light of the creation of the internet and cell phones and smartphones and everything else. Too much of a good thing. You know, it's like that idea of like, like I used to work at an Apple store for years, and there was always this weird thing of like, I would go to work all day and I would literally help people with disabilities understand the accessibility features of the iPhone. And it would be like game changing. Like I remember like working with a customer with a son that had autism and they were nonverbal. The iPad was like changing their life. And they would come back into the store and they would talk to me about like how this iPad, and then I would go home and I would get on Facebook, in 2016, I would be at an Apple store working for this massive corporation that needed me to tell the story about how this is changing the world for the better. And then the reality is I would like post something about my concerns about, gun legislation, and my uncle would comment on Facebook, and all of a sudden I'm like, I don't want to talk to my uncle ever again. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's like this weird sort of thing there that like, as generally as I can say that, this song is about, and I think it too, like, I'm not thinking of anyone in particular, anybody's uncle, angry uncle at Thanksgiving. They have a truth that is reinforced by Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and whatever algorithm is being fed to them based on how they've used their phone, the things that they've liked, the articles they've clicked on. And so there's this very specific truth that's given to them. And then there's a very specific truth that's simultaneously given to me. I'm not reading the same articles. I'm not liking the same things, right? And so that's like, there was at some point, we started venturing off. We probably already had differing views on things, but our ideals have been like reinforced over time. So it's like, good thing I can keep in touch with my best friend, JT the human, who we were talking about earlier, who lives in Delaware, and we can connect with things via the internet and FaceTime and whatever else. There's so many things there's people finding communities and finding ways to, I'm neurodivergent, and there's like language that I have now at 40 that I wouldn't have had to be able to express myself because of the shit I've found on the internet and the communities that I've found and like the stories that I've heard from other people. While simultaneously, there are people who are, we're also siloed in terms of what our truth is. And I say that like with air quotes. And so, again, coming back to the verse, too much of a good thing, biases like a mood ring. And it's like you said, confirmation bias, right? We already believe something and then you're handed the thing again and you're like, yeah, fuck yeah, I knew that. And then you don't even think about the fact that like what just happened was just full on confirmation bias. We're all in many ways digging our heels in to the point where I think like a lot of people don't feel any other recourse except for to get fucked up in a melee, to get crazy. You hit something on the head though there where you were talking about like sort of the release of the chorus. It is both calling out the problem of the thing while also like simultaneously hoping to evoke that feeling of like you sitting down on your couch and you're like getting those dopamine hits of being on Instagram and getting the algorithm like feeding you your biases. It's like a drug.
Well, there's a few times that you use or vocal effects are used on your voice that some of them are a little subtle and then some of them are a little bit clearer. But I think about, in the second verse, there's, you're talking about, what is it? The line of fizzle out or crash and burn in a blue blaze. And when you say blue blaze, there's like an octave pedal that's, I'm hearing it as like an octave pedal, but it like gives this kind of floor to it. Like it gives it a little bit of this emphasis. It's kind of effective, especially, and I think, where does it happen? This will probably blow up in our face and then start a riot, tear it down, join the parade. And I think in through there, that octave pedal just gets a little bit more intense through there. There's some nice little emphasis going on, and whoever was doing the engineering or the final mixes. But I think one of the parts where it's super effective, I don't know if I'm calling it the right thing, in your outro where it's the internet says it. Wait, let me say the internet said it, sorry. The internet said it. There's like an auto-tune or something going on there that's kind of messing with your voice. And I keep thinking of that as like AI messing with you. This is what I'm trying to sing, but the algorithms or the AI is trying to mess with what I'm trying to present or say. It's this really nice, effective, and actually there's it's kind of beautiful, some of the stuff that's going on there. But besides that, it seems like somebody off the scenes is messing with your voice. That's what it feels like.
Well, Sven, you're like again, hitting the nail on the head. Shout out Brock Mende. Brock is one of my best friends, has worked on all the White Lucy music as producer, recording engineer, mixing engineer, mastering engineer, runs an incredible studio in Chicago called Friends of Friends Recording. So we did the whole record with Brock. I wish so badly that I could remember what the device was that Brock used, but he had gotten this thing, a little box, imagine like a white little box that almost looks like a fairly large guitar pedal. Yeah, all that stuff that you hear with my voice, Brock kind of did like live in the mix with knobs. If you go to the Friends of Friends Instagram, there is a video on there where he actually does a little plug on that thing. I think it's called Kronos or something. Brock is amazing. The record sounds incredible because of all of his engineering and production on the record. But yeah, like the internet said it to me, that was like the line that just had to wrap it all up because of everything that I was talking about, right? It's like, I just think about like you're in a conversation with someone and you're listening to them and you're like, that sounds not, and they're like, well, I read it on the internet.
I did my research.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was trying to very much like encompass that feeling. And I'm glad that you like it because I was always a little nervous. It was like a little too on the nose. Give it that feeling of there's like a mechanical sort of digital overtaking happening in that moment. That's my favorite part. That's my favorite part of it. So I don't know if you asked the question. But
I didn't ask because I was going to tell you my favorite. Actually, funny enough, like, well, I kind of feel like cheating a little bit, maybe, but there's two parts. I'm going to answer one that I really like that is a simple answer, which is I really love the first transition from the verse to the chorus. It feels like kind of the heavens are opening up and it's like this really, the bass is dropping. It feels like the music is trying to make you whole. I don't know if that's that. I feel like that's a little bit too grandiose, but that was my first impression when I heard that. And I was like, oh, okay. That is one of my favorite, but my favorite actually is the instrumental transition just before it goes into the internet said it. What I feel like it does very successfully is that it incorporates some of the best qualities of what's happening in the verse with the best qualities that's happening in the chorus. So like it's wonderfully rhythmic. I think you get more in the verse than you do with the chorus, but it has those beautiful chords that are in the chorus. So like you basically are incorporating this wonderful rhythm that's used in the verse, or at least rhythmicness that you had in the verse and then add it to the chorus. And I feel like it does this really nice transition, and it's even more of that like lulling you into loving the song, even though it's about getting fucked up in a melee, right?
Yeah. Like fun fact about that, when the second chorus ends, we do like a little bit of like a bait and switch on you where the guitar and the drums come back in as if like it's going back into a verse, right?
Right.
It comes in for a second and then it drops into this like variation on what's happening in the chorus. And initially, when I got the demo from Chase, we didn't have a bridge effectively written or an outro written, right? We had a verse, a chorus, a verse, and a chorus. It was very like A, B, A, B. I heard as I was recording it, I was like, oh man, like what if we like threw like a bar from the effectively what is the start of the choruses or the verses into as almost like wedged in between the chorus and this. We worked with our drummer, whose name is Andres Crovetti, incredible musician in Chicago. Shout out Andres. He plays bass in an incredible sort of tropical funk instrumental band called Cabeza de Chivo. He's a multi-instrumentalist, first and foremost a drummer, fucking incredible drummer, played drums in the whole record. So I have to give a huge shout out to Andres when we were actually recording the real thing, right? Because we replaced everything with like real instruments and real synth and real bit, there's nothing that was in the demo that is in this recording. So when I was like, hey, I want to like do that, that's what that's supposed to be. His little like drum fill right there just like nails it. And that truly begins what is my favorite part of the record, which is the whole outro of the song. And I love what Brock did with my vocals. in that part is sick. I love it. But the reason that the outro is my favorite part of the song is because it so perfectly highlights, number one, Brock's production, his engineering, his mixing, and his mastering, like just the overall production of the song. But then it highlights our studio musicians who have all become great friends of Chase and I. Of course, it highlights Chase, who is an incredible musician. It's funny, it's like if I'm in this conversation, I almost like want to gloss past Chase because he feels just like an extension of myself. So I got to give him his flowers too. But there's our good friend, a guy named Matthew Blocker, who played all of the keys on this song and a lot of the synthesizer on this song. He's kind of the guy that's like sort of soloing with the electric piano throughout the end of the song. Between him and Andres and what they're playing, I think it may have also been Andres on the mini Moog. So there's like this don't, bump, 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 which is matching the bass guitar.
Right.
So there's synth bass on the song. So all that stuff sort of coming together at the end of the song is my favorite part. Like I love getting to the end of the track and sort of just listening to these guys jam, listening to Chase, Andres, and Matt do their thing, because they're all three incredible musicians. When I listen to White Lucy, most of the time, what I'm doing outside of like critiquing like if I can get past critiquing my own performance as a vocalist, what I'm doing is I'm just in awe of the people I get to make music with, because they're all just incredible musicians. So yeah, that last part of the song for sure is my favorite, because Matt and Andres just crush it, and it's so good throughout the end. One thing that was really cool when we made this record, and I have to also give a shout out to this person, our good friend Mike Novak owns and operates the Chicago Electric Piano Company, which is just this incredible electric keyboard repair shop and showroom in Chicago. They effectively have what I would call like a mini Smithsonian of electric pianos and synthesizers, you know, from all decades. We were so fortunate that Mike, he has a tiny recording studio within their shop, and you walk in there and it's like wall to wall Wurlitzers and Rhodes and mini Moogs and, you know, just like all of these different Mellotrons and, you know, and I'm talking like the real thing all over the place. And we were able to go in there, and all of the keyboards and the synthesizers on our record were recorded there with Mike, and we just got to use whatever they had in the shop. And Matt Blocker, who works at the Electric Piano Company, and Andres, who played drums on the record, is also an accomplished keyboardist. And we spent a couple days there with those guys just playing around with different sounds. And so where you kind of hear that on the end of Melee, where there's like these really cool synth and keyboard sounds, that's really throughout the whole record, because we had access to a museum's worth of incredible keyboards thanks to Mike Novak and the Chicago Electric Piano Company. So it all sounds awesome, and those guys, they deserve their flowers as well. So I got to shout them out.
My final question in this section is, why did you pick this song to be the song you wanted to talk about today?
Well, first and the most basic reason is because it's out and people can hear it, because the record's not out yet. But also, I think like it really is one of my favorite songs on the album. I think it's a fun song, while simultaneously, like you said, it like kind of takes you on a journey where it's like funky and fun, and you get to the hook and it gives you like a release or something. I love the way it sounds. And then I also think like it really is some of my favorite lyrics on the record. It's just one of my favorites on the record, and I felt like it would be a fun one to talk about. And unfortunately, the content of the song has only become more irrelevant. It's been recent days.
Yeah.
I wasn't planning that, but here we are. You can obviously hear it on all the streaming platforms. I do some video editing, and I made a lyric video for this song that you can see on our Instagram or on YouTube that I think put some super cool visuals to the song as well. So I don't know if you like what you heard and you want to kind of take it, you know, a step further and have some fun visuals to go with it, go watch the lyric video. So that's what I'll say.
Champagne is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Jubilee Cafe. Jubilee Cafe is a free weekly meal program at Community United Church of Christ, 805 South 6th Street in Champaign, Illinois. Jubilee Cafe serves a home-cooked meal from 5 to 6:30 each Monday. Their mission is to feed hungry people by cooking healthy, delicious meals and by serving their guests restaurant-style with servers waiting on tables. Jubilee Cafe is open to anyone who cares to eat with them. Because food insecurity among students is so high, they serve students as well as others in and around the Champaign-Urbana community who struggle with hunger. Meals are free to all and will be served each Monday evening, located in the accessible lower level of the building at 6th and Daniel Streets in Champaign. For more information on the meal or how to volunteer, go to the Jubilee Cafe CUCC Facebook page or email them at jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. That's jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. Welcome back, Micah.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Champaign-Urbana venue, past or present?
I have to say, as a musician, it was probably the High Dive. Like OG High Dive, the sound was so good. I saw Sufjan Stevens there once, and like life-changing show. Again, just sounded incredible. But then playing there, actually as a musician, I always felt like we sounded really good. I could hear myself. I feel like we played well. So for sure there. Yeah. So probably the High Dive.
Yeah. I feel like we've lost something with the High Dive and then the Accord not being around anymore. It's also, it was a great venue for stuff during Pygmalion, it was just a great venue. What's crazy is I didn't realize what had happened to it because I live in Chicago and haven't been too involved with the Champaign scene in a while. But my mom got remarried last year, and she got married there in the new version of whatever this is now. And I officiated the wedding, which was an incredible honor. And when I walk in, it was, the last So Long Forgotten show was there. Incredible memory of that show. And where my mom and my stepdad Marty got married and stood, and I stood there and officiated, was where the old stage used to be. And it took me a second. I don't know why. It was I walked in there. Was it still up?
No, there's no stage. It's just
okay.
So I walk in. I was like, man, isn't the High Dive around here? And then I walk in, and I was like, and then we walked back there, and I'm like, wait, what the? Mom, you're getting married where the last So Long Forgotten show is, quite literally. So that was super weird. I loved that place. I'm bummed that it's not a venue anymore. I'm glad my mom had a cool place to get married, though, I guess. Yeah. I would have rather it just be a venue. She could have found somewhere else to get married.
Okay. It's one of those places where it functioned as, a venue, but didn't have anything else besides. I can see where it might have had trouble. This is the whole question of you want to say we need more venues in Champaign-Urbana, but it's always a burden on venues to be venues, it's not always going to be the big cash cow or even a cow.
Yeah. And it's only getting harder.
Yeah.
Venues just have to be pickier now. Artists have to be pickier. It's you're seeing the reality of living in the modern world, and it's everything is more expensive. Venue owners are just doing everything they were already trying to make ends meet, and it's even more so now. So I get it. You asked me that question. I think I have really incredible sound, and then one of my favorite shows ever was our last show. But I think when I think about Champaign venues, the other thing that comes to mind for me is the small room at the Canopy Club. There's the big room at the Canopy Club, but I just loved playing the small room at the Canopy Club.
There's something that at least with Champaign-Urbana, I always feel you can go to an amazing show and the venue is intimate.
I prefer an intimate venue. When we were doing it full time, I would have rather played to a small room of 100 people who knew us and liked our music than a full room of 1,000 people where that same 100 were there and nobody else knew us. You know what I mean?
Right.
I would rather play to a full room of like a small full room of fans, you know?
Right.
So, and that's what we experienced for sure. Like in the small room at the Canopy Club, Cowboy Monkey, you know, back when that was
right
the way it was. Mike and Molly's upstairs and Mike and Molly's. God,
oh gosh. Yeah.
That was just good times.
I kind of wanted to talk a little bit before we get into the heavier stuff. I kind of wanted to talk to you about this collective, the New Sphere Collective. Yeah. What's that all about? Like, when did you kind of go from having a band to saying, let's help other people create music and release music?
Yeah, I think it was actually around the time that So Long Forgotten was really starting to wind down. And I was probably going through some sort of identity crisis, and that like, who am I? What am I doing with my life now creatively? You know, like, but like being involved with music for so long, so many of my friends and the relationships that I have that are, you know, like have become sort of these lifelong relationships have been with people that make music. And I think that that's no coincidence. It's like, I can just connect with people that understand what it's like to write music and try to be vulnerable and put it out there in front of people. And my dad was a graphic designer. My brothers are both filmmakers. I've kind of just been around different forms of multimedia creation my whole life. I had enough experience with like graphic design and video that I wanted to just kind of help friends with that piece of it. I'm one of those people that like, I love to connect people. For example, like my friend JT, shout out JT the Human, just released an album on Friday through our collective. JT's from Houston originally, and JT and I met through work out in the Bay Area back in like, man, when was that? 2016. And JT was, we just talked about working together, and JT came to Champaign and worked with Brian Bachman on a record. I pulled in a graphic designer friend in to like help with their album cover. And, you know, now it's years later, and again, just worked with JT on this release and got JT connected with Brock, who has done all the White Lucy stuff. My good friend Abby, who used to manage So Long Forgotten, is an incredible songwriter as well. You know, she's done all the background vocals for both White Lucy records, and I've worked with her on covers. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I think Shop Class is actually a perfect example. They're also on New Sphere, former members of So Long Forgotten. And again, my good friend Brian Bachman from Louisville, who you've interviewed. I worked with them, and a mutual friend, our friend Christian Gradelli, who does like really incredible collage work. I actually don't want to take much credit for this because I kind of was much more of just like a liaison in terms of creative direction and stuff like that, where I didn't do actually much of the work, but I did take photos for them for their album release. And the other thing that I've really wanted to do with New Sphere is try to do experiential listening parties and ways to experience, you know, the records that are different than like what you would normally experience. This is something that I really need to revisit soon. Is I feel like the listening party, it can really be pretty depressing, especially as an artist. And the reason I say that is like, I don't know if this connects with anybody that's listening or with you. It's like you go to a listening party, it's at a bar, and they play the record, and like no one's listening. People are just talking through it. And if you're the artist and people are supposed to be like listening to your album, which is like actually like a really vulnerable thing to go through, right? You like imagine like the moment you and I just sat and listened to our song, you sat and you listened. And so it was not awkward. It was like Sven is like listening and like taking it in. And certainly there's like a whole fucking podcast that we're going through talking about my song. So there's not much more you could do to show that you like are intentionally taking it in. But you can imagine like at most listening parties, people don't sit down and listen and take it in.
So what are you planning on doing making listening parties like more, or should I say less sad?
Yeah. I think like it comes down to, number one, whoever's hosting it, setting an expectation with a crowd around like, this is what we're here to do. There's going to be a point where the lights are going to go down. Find a comfortable place to sit down. One thing that we did that I think really made a difference, and if anyone else is in a band and, you know, is planning a listening party, I think this is a really basic thing that you can do that makes a big difference, is we created a really cool booklet. Like imagine like a liner notes in a deluxe edition vinyl that you would get, where there's not only the lyrics, but maybe there's like some interviews about songs similar to like the type of conversation we're having here. And what's cool about that is like, as the music is playing along, you have something to sort of like read along with, and that keeps them from talking to their neighbor or the person they came with, and it gives them another level of interaction with the song. Another thing that we've done is like, we've just incorporated video. It's like, you wouldn't go to a film screening and talk through the whole thing, right?
Right.
So like, what if you just make a listening party like a film screening, but again, there's just video on the wall, like it could be a projector that goes along with the music. You have a booklet, and now you have like two types of visual media that keep you from talking to your neighbor, that, you know, again, like it discourages talking to your friends that you might be there with. And like in that moment, right, where the record is going on. Because I think like what's missing that's not talked about enough when it comes to listening party is like, I think about my friend Brock, who is the man behind the board with our record. In those moments of like, hey, we're all going to sit down and listen to our record. Like, I want people to hear Brock's work. It's not just like listening to our songs. If there's like a decent speaker setup and you can like really hear the song, those people, the people in the studios, like, to me, that's actually a time where those people should be getting their flowers for the work, and like in like a large space. Because typically what happens is people have their album release show and they go and they play their songs live and they sound somewhat of a version of what's on the record.
Right.
It's pretty hard for almost any band to go perfectly recreate what they did on a record in a live setting, right? In a listening party type setting, you know, you can like have people sit down and really focus on like the work that went in to making a record. And I think it's just about setting expectations, number one, creating an atmosphere, right? That could be lighting, it could be video, it could be, again, like some sort of pamphlet or booklet or whatever to sort of like go along with the record. For what we did with Shop Class for their last record is we actually did a gallery for the collage artist that did their album cover. He actually also had his art up on the walls. Nice. So like in between, you know, the times where you're listening to the record, people could go look at the art. So yeah, things like that. And we want to do a lot more of it. If anyone's listening and they want to do some cool listening parties, I'm like ready to keep trying this in different ways, and, you know, just creating experiences for people to like go out there and listen to their records that they made with a group of people that's intentional and it's meaningful, and encourages diving in and experiencing the record like with a group. I think there's something really powerful about that.
What do you think makes a good music scene?
I think what makes a good music scene is just like coming out, showing up. It sounds like the most obvious thing in the world, but when I look way back to when like So Long Forgotten first started, we would play at this place out near Mahomet called The Shed all of the time. And it was just this literal tool shed in the country in Mahomet, Illinois. When it first started, there wasn't a lot of kids there, and it got to the point where kids would just show up. It didn't matter who was playing. And so like, I think in terms of like actual like a scene outside of just the bands, right? Because there's like the artists within a town, and that's a scene, and they play together and whatever else. But like, there's also like, you got to have the people that come out that aren't in bands,
right?
And that show up over and over and over again, and that support. I know for a fact right now, there's some really cool shit happening like in Kankakee, Bradley, Bourbonnais area for like the hardcore scene. They've got an active scene out there where kids just show up. It doesn't matter who's playing. They just show up to venues and they support who's ever there. As far as like, how do you do that? I don't know, other than like, so often I think it can be a single venue. I think it has to be an all ages venue. Like when I think about a scene, it's like a place that on the weekends kids can go and they can be safe.
Right.
And they can form friendships and they can form bonds, and the kids within that scene that show up there, then they get a guitar and they get a drum set and they meet other people, and then they start playing music. It's like kind of got to be this like cyclical sort of thing where the scene itself is actually kind of creating more bands, and then those bands are playing those things, and then those friends are coming to watch their band play for the first time. When I think of a music scene, like that's the sort of DIY cool shit that like gets me excited.
I'm going to read between the lines a little bit and maybe add, it sounds like at the heart, it's accessibility, right? Like,
yeah, 100%.
Giving somebody the opportunity to attend without barriers, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where I know that that's been brought up quite a few times. You know, I don't know why this seems to exist, but it's more of like in the DIY venues, there's a lot more potential. There's a lot of venues out there, commercial venues, that do a great job of making people feel safe, making people feel welcome. But I don't know, maybe it's the idea of like a DIY venue they're doing it because they love it, you know? And I think that when you love something, you defend it. And again, not to say that commercial venues do not do that as well, but I feel like the DIY are doing it purely out of the love of the music.
Well, I think it's like the difference of like, there are venues in Chicago, for example, where it's like the outlier in terms of like who's playing there on any given night. Like if the outlier on any given night that's playing there is a local band. So it's like there's just touring bands coming through all the time.
Right.
From outside of Chicago, right? And then there's the opposite, where it's like there are venues where it's like mostly local, right? And then you bring in touring bands and they have the opportunity to sort of like experience the local scene. I don't know. I think it's like finding that balance, right? Because you also want to be a scene that like is accepting of people coming in. When I was touring, there was nothing better than like going and like playing a show that was full of people that had no idea who you were. And it was because like you were band 3 of 4, that the other 3 bands that played were just local bands that brought the kids out. And they almost like did you a solid by being like, here, you can have this slot on our local night, and we're going to slot you in to where the kids they're going to be there before because the local bands, and they're going to be there, you know, during your set because the band after you is, you know,
right.
It would just be the perfect sort of formula for you to like play in front of a bunch of new kids that it would have never seen you. And like, to me, that it's like you would get there and be like, damn, they have a good scene. Because like the kids respected the fact that these other bands brought you in to play their show.
Or how valuable is it that we do get to see live music that isn't just from the local scene? Because I feel like that brings in a little bit of that fresh blood, a little bit more. You're not doing the thing that you've seen other bands in the local scene do, and the way that they use that pedal. You know, I mean, even as a small thing, it's like, oh, because you see how people do things within the local scene, and you're like, well, you know, that must be how it's done. And then you see somebody else kind of come in from the outside and bring something fresh. So I think having the mix of, don't get me wrong, I love the local scene so much, but it is refreshing to have new people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where Champagne's really special, is like in Champagne, there's always, or at least there has been in the past, plenty of, you know what, and I think even now there is, like, there's plenty of, there's always spaces popping up. Like, I think like just like the way the Rose Bowl has changed, you know, to where it's like they're bringing in these like amazing national acts, you know, in this place where it's like 10 years ago, if someone talked about the Rose Bowl, it wasn't this place where MJ Lenderman was going to come play. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he was going to be at the Canopy Club. Champaign-Urbana has always been really good at that. Sure, it's a college town, but it's like, it's a college town where there is a music scene. And it's evolved and it's changed and venues have come and gone, but it's always been a place like where people want to go and they want to play, you know? And I think too, what's been exciting about that for so many bands in Champaign is that like, it's this small town where it's like, you can go play with those bands that like, actually it would be really difficult to go play, you know, with an MJ Lenderman in Chicago. A Champaign band is probably going to have better luck getting on a show with MJ Lenderman in Champaign than they would if they were in, you know, playing a show with him in Chicago. I think that that's really cool. Like going back to like the small room in the Canopy Club, we played a show there with this band called Color Revolt. They broke up years ago, but they were on Fat Possum Records, and they were like this band that like our band just worshipped. We adored. We got the opportunity to play with them in that room, and it was like, I'll never forget like how we got that opportunity to play with them. It was amazing.
Champagne is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Exile on Main Street. Exile on Main Street, located in the old train station building at 100 North Chestnut Street in downtown Champaign, has been helping to build record collections since 2004. Carrying a wide array of new and used LPs, CDs, and video games. Exile on Main Street has something for just about any music enthusiast and old school gaming devotee. Exile also hosts regular free live music shows on its stage, so be sure to check out their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for the up-to-date details on the next upcoming event. Open 7 days a week, they can be reached by phone at 217-398-MAIN. That's 217-398-6246. Welcome back. So, of course, I have to ask, Micah, what is your favorite non-musical thing or things?
Yeah. So I've listened to your episode with Brian, my good friend, and I don't want to just rehash what Brian said, but if I'm really honest, it's also Liverpool Football Club. So I will say, and also almost as important to me is Formula One. So I guess like I'm real into like, I guess British sports, Formula One and Premier League football. So yeah.
Formula One is definitely more of the international, right? But or
Yeah,
are you saying
it
like
is.
particular Formula One drivers or British ones are
Yeah. Well, okay, that's a good point. It is. It's all over. It's global for sure, and there's drivers from all over the world. But if you get very into F1, you realize it is British as fuck. Like there's all of the commentators, the majority of the media. Most of the teams are based out of the UK, to the point where drivers that are not from there constantly complain about the way that the British drivers are treated in the media compared to the non-British drivers. So while it is not officially a British sport, say like the Premier League, it's British. Formula One is British. Which is interesting, but it's actually owned by an American company, and becoming more and more American as the days go on. But no, it's still very, very British, I would say. I would argue.
We know why people get into football, but I mean, how did you get into Formula One? Yeah,
so good question. There is, and I feel like this is a lot of Americans that have gotten into it in the last 7 years. There's a documentary series on Netflix called Drive to Survive. Watched the first season, got hooked immediately, and my wife did as well. And since then, like, we watch every race weekend that it's on. We've traveled to Europe a couple times to see races in person. Yeah, we're totally obsessed. We have friends over many Sundays to watch the races together. So yeah, it's a good time.
I don't know if I've ever asked this, but before you got into and then eventually got into Formula One, what would you say is the one thing that maybe surprised you about Formula One? And I ask this because every time I think that something is very cut and dried and a certain thing or perception, there's always something it's like, oh, I didn't realize it was that complex.
Yeah. Oh man, so many things surprised me about it. I think first and foremost is like, I've had arguments with people about it being a sport. There's like the idea that it's like, some people are like, a sport is only a team sport and it has to involve a spherical object or something, but just like the teamwork that goes into it, the strategy, it is 100% a team sport, on each team, there's 2 athletes, which are the 2 drivers, and they are 100% athletes. Like, the physical toll that it takes on them, the level of focus and concentration, the like
reflexes
and the precision with which they have to do things. And then you see it in person. And that really was the game changer, because we watched our first like season of F1 that we watched every race and whatever else. Watched that. We did that season. Then we were like, at the end of the season, we're like, we got to go see a race next year. So then we went to the British Grand Prix. I'll never forget like seeing it for the first time in person, watching a car drive by you at over 200 miles an hour and then like slow down and take a turn, but they take the turn at 90 miles an hour. It's so crazy in person. Like it's jaw dropping. Like, the only thing that I can like compare it to is like if you've ever gone to like an air and water show, and like the sort of feeling that you feel like when a jet flies by you, it's like that sort of like, whoa. And then you go, oh, these guys are insane.
Right.
And so there's like a new level of respect for them, because you're like, thank you for entertaining me in this way, because you're a nutcase. Like, you're absolutely fucking bonkers to do this thing like 24 times a year all over the world. Sure, they're getting paid super, super well to do it, but there's a reason like very few people do it, because it's nuts. It's really, truly a crazy thing for someone to do. They're just strapping themselves to a rocket.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just, you know, my dad's huge into F1, and, you know, I think for him, it is the kind of all the physics that are at work. He's like, you know, there's, the way that the cars are designed, there's enough downward force generated as the car moves along that it could
technically drive upside down.
Yeah. Which, like, that seems like, whoa, that's not that amazing. But if you think about how heavy that thing is, and that's a lot. Like, and then, that's probably not even the most miraculous thing, but it's just, it always, think about that, like, just in vehicle driving upside down, but because of its speed and its aerodynamics, it's getting pushed. Is that on there? Okay, good. It's getting pushed to whatever surface it's making contact
and then think
with.
About like what the G forces are for that to be the case. Like, they say, like, if you're an F1 driver, like, if you ever like just look at them a lot of them, they're like these like tiny little, like, you know, beautiful European men. And they have like thick necks, because as they're driving around these, you know, these racetracks, like the G forces, like, they just are like pulling their head which way. So they say that like if you like a F1 driver's necks are so strong that like they could lay on their side, and like a person, like a teenage boy that weighs 110 pounds could like sit on their head, and like their neck, like, and their like neck wouldn't,
right,
like they could just hold them up with just their neck. It's like that amount of weight that is like constantly pressing against them. So anyways, F1's a big thing for me. And you know what, if my wife was here, I wish I could like switch her out for me. She knows even more than I do as far as like the strategy and aerodynamics and all that stuff, which is, she's like super into it. She also is very into all of the she finds them all very attractive.
Oh, of course. Of course.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Micah, thank you for being on the show and talking about your song Melee off of the upcoming album The Paradise, which is dropping August 15th, 2025, and your collective, the New Sphere Collective, and the Champaign-Urbana music scene, what makes a good music scene, and of course your favorite non-musical things. So I appreciate you coming on the show and chatting with me.
Sven, thanks so much for having me. This was super fun. Love what you're doing with this podcast. I mean, this scene is worth being talked about in this way on a regular basis. So thanks for doing it. It's brought a lot of joy and really important friendships to my life. So Champaign-Urbana music scene, you know, for life or something like, yeah. Thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Micah Boyce reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it where you live. Yeah, I knew that.
That's a wrap.
Champaign is also a band.
You almost have an NPR voice. It's so good.
Studio South Speaker on the inside.
So there's like this don't, bump, bump,